Hello and welcome. You're listening to Nature's a Hoot with Tom Morath and Hannah Shaw, the wildlife podcast from the Hoot Conservancy Trust.
As you know, we're all about birds at the Trust, but birds don't live alone, they are part of a whole ecosystem. So the podcast is our chance to take a more general look at wildlife beyond birds. If you're itching to know more about biodiversity or barn owls, or eager to explore the world of woodlands and wetlands, basically, if you like wildlife, you're in good company.
And you don't need to be an expert. We've got that covered, as we're joined by some of the greatest voices in conservation to tell us more about what's happening right now in the wild world around us. Coming up in this month's episode, we're talking all about the mysterious world of bird senses.
That's right, we'll be sifting the fact from the fiction in terms of what birds can see, hear, smell and taste.
Stick with us as we'll be talking to biologist Simon Potier about the work he's been doing to answer these questions as part of a study at Lund University. So, Hannah, big question. How are you? And most importantly, that tadpole that you had, what became of the tadpole? Oh no, you're shaking your head.
Who knows?
You don't know?
I haven't seen it. I've no idea where it is.
So it's not a frog then?
So yesterday I had a little bit of drama. There's been no frog sightings.
That is a shame. Oh.
Nothing. So I don't know where it is. And yesterday I had a bit of drama because I thought the pond was emptying itself because I got a little solar fountain, but the solar fountain was slowly emptying the pond. So the fountain water was squirting the water out of the pond, and I thought, oh my god, I've got a leak, but it doesn't have a leak, it's fine. But I thought when I was sort of digging around to see if I could see if the lining was ripped, but I didn't see any frogs, no, sadly.
That's a shame. Sorry, can you hear me crunching?
Yeah. That's all right. I do have some fun news that I found this morning. My bee barrel has got 2 leafcutter bees in it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How do you know that's what they are?
Very excited about that. Well, I mean, because they've put little bits of leaf around the end of the bamboo that's in the barrel. So it's like a little one of those ready-made ones with bamboo in, and 2 of them have got little bits of leaf stuck on the end. So I think it's leaf cutter bees.
That is very cool. I like that. I like
that
a lot.
Yeah. How's things with you? How is things with
me? Really, really busy. Like, I'm sorry to everybody at home, but yes, I am sat here eating a packet of hula hoops because today, like, sorry, I'm talking my mouth full now. So, like, we organised to record the podcast, and it seems like every month we go back towards more of a normality. Like, some things are being lifted, and we can do a few more things, which is fantastic. But that also means there's more to do.
Yeah.
So, at one stage when we started the podcast, it was like, well, we kind of got a bit of office work to do, and obviously we've got to keep looking after the birds. But I felt like I had more time, and now I'm in here. It's really warm, and I'm eating my hula hoops because I'm not going to get a chance to eat my hula hoops otherwise. But it is lovely to see people at the Trust.
Yeah.
Really nice. It's feeling summery. I've just, I'm recording this off of the back of commentating for the Wings of Africa display, and to be stood out there while it's sunny and it feels like Africa and all of the African birds are flying in, that's really cool. And I've just had a few days off, and we went to Bournemouth Beach.
Oh,
have you been to Bournemouth Beach?
No, not recently. No, when I was younger.
It's lovely. It was really, really nice. Until we wwere like looking for shells and things like, that sort of weird thing that you do when you go to the beach and you look for things like that wash up.
Yeah.
And we were looking for seashells and interesting pebbles and things. And Amy, my other half, found a human tooth.
What?
A human tooth that had been washed up, and she
like a whole
she showed to me
like adult
a
tooth.
whole Yeah,
It's
a
like-
whole adult tooth. Like it must have been a molar or something.
That is horrible.
And she showed it to me and she said, do you think this is a stone or do you think this is a tooth? I went, Amy, that is a tooth. Like, please throw it back into the water. It's just disgusting. She had this kind of morbid curiosity about it. It was like, can we take it home? It's like, no!
Someone's
No,
tooth.
we can't take it home. Someone's tooth. But then my mind thought, that tooth has got a story here on Bournemouth Beach. Like, there's me. It's like come off of some like old pirate somewhere who's like selling his teeth for gold doubloons or something. But so it was. I'm great, but I was slightly traumatized by finding, human teeth on Bournemouth Beach. And I'm sorry if Bournemouth Beach now gets a bad rep from my tale.
Do you think it was definitely a human tooth? I feel like it could have been like and not a fossil. Like maybe it was a fossil from some sort
God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if it was like this really rare and exciting fossil and I told her to throw it back in the sea?
No, it's probably just someone who has jumped in the sea and bashed their face on a rock.
This is what I mean.
Tooth's dropped out.
You're seeing what I mean about the stories that go on in your brain as to how does a human tooth get born? And it could have come from anywhere, couldn't it?
They could. What? The rest of the human could be there somewhere.
I think we're going too far now. I also did think that. I thought we're going to be like in the middle of some sort of murder mystery here.
Yeah, imagine if you found something else. That would be awful.
Yeah, well, if the police were like, oh, well, if anybody's found anything that they think would be suspicious, let us know. And it's like, we've just chucked it back. Could be anywhere now. But anyway, that's how my week's going.
That's different.
Exciting. No tadpoles in the garden. My pond, I don't know if anything can survive in my pond, to be honest. There's so much blanket weed on the top of my very small pond. If anybody's got any tips, actually, for tackling blanket weed on a very small area, and I think part of my problem is there's not a lot of shade for it. I've let little plants kind of grow up around it, but it gets a lot of sunlight.
I think the best thing is to have plants in there, isn't it? Because that uses the nitrates. Because I think too much blanket weed is from too much. Well, it's too much sun and too much nitrogen in the water.
Well, there are plants in there and like oxygenators and things. So I thought I had the balance
it's really
right,
hard,
but
mine gets blanket weed as well. It was really bad last year, but now
is it just
my oxygenators seem to have really gone mad, like in over the summer, and grown loads, and just from some floating ones that I threw in, obviously they've rooted, or I don't know, and there's loads of them in there now, and they seem to have, there's more of those, there seems to be less blanket weed, so maybe it might be that.
Okay, well maybe that's something I need to do. Do you do the stick method, the twirly stick method with your pond?
To get the blanket weed out?
Yeah, like, and then just that.
I'll just stick my hand in.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay. Well, different methods. We should probably get on with the rest of the show because there's loads to cram in. Yeah, let's move on.
As always, it's time for a bit of fun with our Matter of Fact challenge, which pitches you and me, Tom, against one another to come up with the best fact in the chosen category. So what was it last month?
Last month, Hannah, it was most impressive plant.
And you went with...
I had the giant water lily, which I thought was incredibly impressive. Like when I read up about it, it had a cool name, Amazonica Victoria, I think it was. And that you could balance a small child on it. But Hannah, what did you go with?
I went with the baobab tree.
Right. And can you hear in my tone that I'm bitter about you going for a tree? Because it's like an ultimate winner straight away. Like, blew my water lily out of the water. No pun intended. I am
pleased to take the crown back, as it were. I don't know what the score is now. Do you know what the score is? How many weeks, months have we been doing it?
Oh, yeah. I think, this is episode 6, I think, of this series. So I think it's 4-2. I think you've won twice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
But in terms of, I mean, this was pretty much a smash it out the park job from you, though. Like it was something like 80-20 to you in terms of percentages. So
amazing.
you did a good job on picking the tree, and it's very cool. It's it was a worthy opponent to a water lily. I can't stand up to a tree of that magnitude. So well done. It's my job to try and claw back for this month, and we've got loads to cram in to this episode. So new challenge for this month, Anna. You need to fit your rationale for your chosen matter of fact into 30 seconds, all right? And I'm going to time us if we can do this, and I wonder if we can actually do it, but we'll give it a go. So, Hannah, this month's matter of fact challenge is...
Best animal teamwork.
Yes, it is. Do you want to go first, actually, Hannah? I know I was going to go first. You want to go first, and I'll time you, and then you can time me.
Okay, so...
Wait, ready?
Are you timing me? Oh,
yeah, God, that's 5 seconds gone already. No.
Okay, start.
Not yet. Right, ready? Here we go. Okay, start the timer, please. Go.
So mine is the African wild dog, or painted dog. And the reason I chose this one is because they use such amazing teamwork to catch their prey. So they live in groups called packs. They live together, and they can be up to 80% successful with their hunts, which is huge, especially if you compare them to,
5
say,
seconds.
lions, for example, which are only successful with 10%.
Very nice. That's bang on 30 seconds there. Well done.
Oh, I had some really interesting stuff to say.
Do you know, there is so much interesting stuff to say, but you got to save it. And I'm going to have to say, Hannah, I'm pretty mortified, actually. This has not happened before on the Matter of Fact Challenge, but I too, when it comes to teamwork, what did you call them? Just African dogs?
I call them African wild dogs, but they're also called painted dogs.
Painted dogs is how I know them, painted dogs, but...
yeah, I like painted dogs.
They're amazing. I mean, I was reading about them. I know we're supposed to be cutting down on time, and it's not happening, is it? Because we're both, like, fangirling and boying over painted dogs. But,
yeah.
I mean, as well as sadly being, like, not very common anymore, like, they've got 1% of their population as they used to be, they're pretty good at, like, helping one another within the pack as well. Like, it's not just to do with the hunt, is it? They're quite social.
Yeah, they're very social, and they have a dominance hierarchy. They have like alpha male and female, who are the most dominant, and then it moves down from there. But yeah, they're very social, and there's lots of help from the younger ones in bringing up the pups. Something I found out. I just want to tell you this really interesting fact that
We'll let you off.
Sorry, they work together before going off on a hunt. They do what's called a rally. So this is what the researchers who looked into it called it. They called it a rally, where they basically like rally each other up to get ready to go on a hunt. And they found that this certain vocalization that they make, which is a rapid exhalation through the nose, or a sneeze, the more of those that they did during the rally, the more likely they were to go for a hunt.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Now, I'm disappointed, but I'm going to go with one of our... Well,
you can have more than 30 seconds if you want.
I think that's cheating, but thank you. I'm going to go across to the insect family, to the invertebrates, and I'm going to go with the leafcutter ant. So leafcutter ants work together in their millions, sometimes 10 million strong, to move plant matter into parts of their underground nests in order to grow a special fungus that they eat. So this is something they hide in their burrows. Each ant is incredibly strong and can carry over 50 times their body weight, whilst releasing pheromones from their glands on their bodies, and this allows them to communicate and coordinate their work. And there's even a fail-safe alarm scent that rallies the colony to fight off intruders. Oh, not bad. Well within the time limit. What do you reckon?
I'll let you off, as we both had the same one.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. That's very kind of you. You might live to regret that. Who knows? Anyway, remember, it is up to you, wherever and however you're listening to Nature's a Hoot. You at home, you need to vote for which of our facts you think best fits the bill of best animal teamwork.
So head over to our Instagram stories or our Twitter feed, both at Hawk Conservancy, to vote. And we will, as ever, be revealing the winner of this month's Matter of Fact Challenge next time.
Right, so question time. What senses do birds of prey use in everyday life? So we talk a lot about this in our displays and demonstrations, and I know I have fallen victim to some common misconceptions, really, about bird of prey senses. Have you done the same in the past, Hannah?
Well, I would forgive you for that, Tom, because I don't think that they were always misconceptions, because, you know, as research develops and you find stuff out about birds or whatever, that things change, don't they? And I think you're probably referring to the assumption that birds don't have a sense of smell, which was a common misconception in the past, but now we do know that they do, or certainly some birds have a sense of smell, and some birds have a very good sense of smell. And
yes,
in fact, like our turkey vultures, for example, that's probably their predominant sense that they use to find food.
Yeah, so I was looking at exactly the same thing when we were thinking about talking about this for this episode. Turkey vultures, and of course we fly burdock and to Benwick here, both turkey vultures, and we can see them in displays here.
Yeah.
And they do seem to be able to have a sense of smell. I can only say that just by things that we've seen and witnessed them doing, but they seem to be able to recognise us actually by a sense of smell on occasion, which is interesting. But also reading up some of the work that's been done around turkey vultures to establish just how good that sense of smell is. So when we look at other species of birds that have a good sense of smell, a kiwi, those little flightless birds that go around probing in the ground, apparently a kiwi can smell earthworms through 15 centimetres of soil.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a turkey vulture's sense of smell supposedly is more sensitive than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly sensitive sense of smell, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you're a bird that eats things that are essentially decomposing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about where they live as well, unlike the old world vultures, which live in sort of open woodland or savanna grassland, where they get up on a thermal and they can see everything around them, turkey vultures live, and black vultures live more in, well, black vultures live often in urban areas, don't they? But turkey vultures live in more forested areas. So in order to find carrion that's under the canopy, they're going to need more than just their sight to find that.
Yeah, and this has kind of gone backwards and forwards for many years, I think. Like, there's been lots of schools of thought where it's like, yeah, a turkey vulture has a fantastic sense of smell. And then when some of the studies came to try and work out how good it was, very often people would use like the smelliest meat they could from a long distance away to try to get the vultures to come in. And what they found was that could never prove the point of turkey vultures having a good sense of smell. And the reason I find super interesting, because again it's a misconception about vultures, which we bang on about all the time, is that the turkey vultures are not interested in finding these smelly, massively decomposed carcasses, because in fact the reason their sense of smell needs to be so good is because they want to smell it as fresh as they possibly can.
When it's fresh,
Which I just find, mind-blowing, that they're actually just smelling it just as it starts to decompose.
Yeah. Simon did some research into the sense of, or olfaction, so smell, in raptors. And one of the experiments he did was a comparison between, I think it was Chimango caracaras and turkey vultures. So caracaras are also scavengers. They do eat, small insects and small invertebrates and things as well, and small mammals and little things that they can catch, but they do also scavenge. And he found that because of that slight sort of dietary difference and the difference in their habitats and the fact that caracaras move around on the ground more, caracaras do use their sense of smell. So he did find that they do use their sense of smell, but they seem to use a combination of smell and sight, whereas the turkey vultures use predominantly smell.
Yeah, and they're trying to smell for one particular thing as well in the wild, like obviously the gases that are coming from a newly deceased carcass. And I'll just read you this little bit from a bit of research that I was doing, and we can put the full article and the link in the show notes or in the blog, I think. But apparently the answer came from an unlikely source. Kenneth Steger, who conducted this research in the 1960s, was talking to engineers who looked after California gas pipelines, and they told him that they could tell when there was a leak in the pipe because turkey vultures always congregated around it. And it turns out that since the 1930s, the company had added a very smelly substance known as mercaptan to gas to help humans detect leaks. And it turns out that when an animal, such as a deer or a cow, dies, its body naturally gives off exactly the same smell, the same compound.
Oh, interesting.
So it makes sense. Yeah. So they were coming around these gas pipelines because they thought they could smell this dead animal.
Very interesting. So what about vision? What do you know about vision? I'm sure you know a lot about raptor vision.
Yes. Good eyesight. Eyes like a hawk, eagle-eyed, all those sort of things. Exceptional vision, I always thought. Although, again, talking to Simon, not always as good as we might think. And it's quite individual to individual species.
Yeah.
And some that we work with on a regular basis. I know he was telling me birds like the Harris hawk, for example, doesn't actually have that much better eyesight than us as a human being.
No.
Whereas there are some species that do much better than us. And I'll kind of wait for Simon to explain it better than me, but he did some really extensive work with birds of prey to try to distinguish how far a bird can see. By using different coloured lines that would kind of cross over, and that'll all become clear when he explains, because he's better than me. But so the biggest bubble I had burst, partly from Simon, but also other people I've since spoke to, is that I was always told the fascinating fact that kestrels have the ability to see into the ultraviolet part of the light spectrum in order to see reflections from mouse and vole urine on the ground, which would make perfect sense. This has since been disproved and is not true.
Yeah, that's been debunked, hasn't it?
So disappointed.
Such a nice little fact, but not a fact.
Such a cool fact that, I will hold my hands up and admit to, not recently, but admit to disseminating that.
We did at the Trust.
In inverted commas, fact for years, and I love telling people that. And there'll be people out there that now think that's true because I've told them. So if anyone's listening, I've told that to, I'm so sorry, but cool fact, but fact debunked. But
that's the thing, is because that's what was assumed, and that's what they did think was how they hunted. But then recently they've done more research and found out that it's not.
Yeah, so. It's always a shame when a nice fact goes, but all the more reason to be constantly keeping up with the science and the research.
Yeah.
What about hearing then, Hannah?
I'll admit to not having much knowledge, much expertise on raptor hearing.
That's all right, because, I bet our listeners will probably have a good ballpark of which family group of birds of prey are really well renowned for their sense of hearing. And that's, of course, the owls. The owls have just got enormous ears. Like, for their size, they're absolutely massive. And again, I'm hoping we can link in the blog to there's a couple of pictures.
Yeah, definitely.
Of the ear openings of barn owls and Tengmalm owls as well, that just show this amazing structure to their skull. Not only large ear openings, but also ear openings that are asymmetrically placed. So one is slightly higher on the skull than the other. And it's my understanding that essentially means that the sound will hit one of the ears a fraction of a second before it hits the other ear, and that sort of 2 chances to hear, even though it would be like some millionths of a second difference between one or the other, that is kind of enough to gain almost X and Y coordinates to where the prey is. So highly sensitive, yes, and there's some species that can hear, the scurry of a lemming underneath, inches and inches of snow. Things like great grey owls are a great example of that.
And the hearing.
but also kind of locational, like it is perfect to
pinpoint.
kind of pinpoint the source of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, the fact that they can hear stuff underneath the snow is just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can see kind of where that evolutionary path has taken, can't you? That at some point that adaptation would not have existed. And it's like, well, actually, every year we're here is getting cold, there's snowfall, and our prey has evolved to dig underneath the snow.
Yeah.
We can't see it. So they develop this incredible facial disc. I mean, if anybody at home listening has not seen a facial disc of a great grey owl, just Google great grey owl, and you'll see they've got this. They're basically mostly face.
Yeah.
And we always tell people here that if you want to know which of the owl's senses they use most out of hearing and eyesight, look for the facial disc. If it's an owl that's got a big round face with these kind of stiff rim of feathers around that disc, then it's going to be using its sense of hearing.
Yeah.
It's a way of funneling the sound. And for the school parties that come here, I always say it's a bit like cupping your hands behind your ears, but like to the max. Like, so they can sort of angle that facial disc to where they're listening, but also it just kind of like cups the sound and bounces it into their ears. They're just amazing.
What about taste?
Taste, yeah, I did try to do a little bit of digging around taste, and there's not a lot of research, not especially with raptors that I could find. I found quite a lot about things like hummingbirds that are trying to taste for nectar, so it's thought they have quite a sensitivity for sweet tasting on the end of their tongue.
Yeah.
Also for bitter berries and things that might be
Poisonous.
Might be kind of poisonous or gone off for other garden birds, but otherwise not a lot. There was a few studies that suggested that birds had absolutely no reaction to hot and spicy things. Like that didn't bother them at all. They're quite happy to eat like jalapenos and things like that. But yeah, not a huge amount. So again, if there's anybody out there that knows a little bit more about birds' sense of taste, I mean, we know that it must happen or it must exist in some form. One, because we know more and more birds of prey have a sense of smell, and we know that those two senses are quite closely linked. But also, the birds, when we feed birds here, they have favourite foods, and I can only think, especially if it's like prepared for them and it's in smaller pieces, I can only think they're judging what they're eating by taste. I mean, maybe by texture as well, but there's sometimes I go and feed one of the birds and they completely turn their beaks up at it. It's like, I don't really fancy that today. And there's other things that's their favourite food, and you know that they're going to be jumping for joy on the day that it's a day where they're going to have a bit of fish because they like fish, or chicken on another day. They do have favourites, so taste must come into that, surely.
Yeah, taste or texture, like you said. But I would have thought there must be something. You could ask. I'm sure Simon will have something to say, because if it's connected the same way it is in humans, the sense of smell and sense of taste, most birds have a functional, what's called an olfactory bulb, which is what they smell with, and I'm sure that's linked. Yeah, I'm sure that's linked to taste, so you would think that they must have some sort of sense of taste.
Yeah, but like with all these things, science ongoing, we don't have all the answers just yet. Or maybe I'm just not very good at finding them. But sense of taste was very much lacking in my research for today, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so I should just quickly talk about the research we've actually done, because we have done some research on visual fields, so eyesight in vultures, where we did some measurements with some of the captive birds. This was a few years ago, to compare their sort of binocular vision and the field of vision that they have, to compare between gyps vultures, so the griffon vulture, and the white-backed vultures, and white-headed vultures, so the comparison between the two, because we know that we've observed white-headed vultures hunting, so it's likely that they would have some difference in their eyesight, because obviously hunting birds have a different sort of visual field in terms of the way that they're looking for food compared to scavenging birds. And they did find that the white-headed vulture has a visual field more similar to a hunting raptor rather than a vulture, which is quite interesting. They're binocular field is a bit bigger than a gyps vulture. But also in a related separate study, we did find that the sort of vision that the gyps vultures have, where they have that scanning vision, where they're looking for carrion, does actually come with some threats, because the way that they fly and the way that they scan and look down, it means that they can't always see directly in front of them.
Yeah, and why would you be looking where you're going?
Yeah.
Like if you're like soaring high in the air,
exactly.
you're not going to bash into anything,
You wouldn't think that there'd be anything to bash into, but this is a consideration for things like wind turbines. So this might be why they're susceptible to getting smashed into wind turbines, is because when they're flying and looking down, they've got this huge field of vision below them looking for carrion to scavenge, but not directly in front of them. So it means that they can crash into things.
Yeah. And that is often the thing, isn't it? When you see this footage, and it's like heartbreaking footage of birds of prey, especially vultures, having that impact with the blades of a wind turbine.
Awful.
It's horrible and horrible to think about. But so often, I'm sure, people listening as well, perhaps the same thing. It's massive and white. Like, how do you miss it?
Yeah.
But it really is that. If that vulture is going to be focused on finding food below them, and everything about their adaptation is to do that, looking up towards where they're going is kind of pointless. It doesn't matter where you're going so long as you're finding food.
Exactly.
Suddenly this great big man-made structure comes along, and they're fast. They look like they're moving slow, but there's no way a vulture of that size could get out of the way.
Yeah, they're way above the tree line, aren't they? So they wouldn't need to look once they're up on a thermal or up to moving across the landscape.
What a shame. Well, and we can link to that research, can't we, through the blog?
Yeah.
So if people want to read a little bit more of that study that was done with a few different species of vultures, you can delve into that a little bit more if you'd like to. So we wanted to dig a little deeper into the science of understanding how well birds of prey use their senses, and so I caught up with Simon Potier about his research into diurnal raptors and their senses. Okay, so Simon, thank you so much for coming on to Nature's a Hoot to talk to us. It's really, really nice to have you. How are things where you are? Where in the world are you actually at the moment?
So not the best question. I'm at the moment unemployed because I finished my contract from Lund University in Sweden this year in March, something like that. And because of the COVID situation, the funding I had to have for another contract in France stops. So we need to wait a bit. It will take longer than we thought before, but I'm still working, but with no money to do my research. But I've done a lot of research this last month, so that does not change anything for me, at least for my full-time job as a researcher.
So you in France at the moment?
I'm in France, but even if when I was working for Sweden for different reasons, I was working from France, mostly because falconry is forbidden in Sweden, and so if I have to study rattles, I have to study rattles elsewhere, and so I just because I came from France.
So is that how you started out, kind of having an interest in birds of prey? Was through kind of working with them one-to-one through falconry?
Since my early childhood, my father is a falconer since 40 years now, and so I was born in a falconry environment, and so I was in love of birds. When I was young, I wanted to be a professional of seabirds, like seagulls, only seagull. I wanted to work only with seagull, but I've seen that it's not possible, and so after. So I did my study in different places in France, but I didn't want, when I was at the university, I didn't want to work on rattles, so I decided to work on fishes. It was good, but then someone from Montpellier asked me whether I wanted to do a PhD on vultures, and I started to be back to rattles world. So this is all I came from.
Fantastic. And what were you doing? What was the PhD involving with vultures?
So I didn't get this PhD. It was on
Oh,
vulture, no problem. It was on vulture feeding. It was to see whether non-natural feeding has an impact on vulture population in France.
Okay.
I did not get it, but after that we discussed with that guy and another. So that guy is Olivier Durier, was a good scientist on vulture, and we discussed with another one who is called Francesco Bonadonna. Is working on bird olfaction, and since that we developed a PhD project for me on both vision and olfaction in raptors, and so I started my PhD on that in 2013, I think so, something like that.
Yeah, so this is what we've been talking about on this particular episode, is all about birds of prey's kind of understanding of the world through their senses, and that's kind of your area of expertise, would you say?
Hope so. I hope so. I hope I have a little expertise on that. So I mostly work on vision. So yeah, during my PhD, I've worked on both sense, so vision and olfaction. But since I am a postdoc, so since 4 years right now, I just decided to work on vision. It's really, really hard to work on olfaction because you need to control something that you can't see for experimental reasons. And so it's really hard, but in the meantime, really, really interesting. So uh, I decided for now to stop a bit working on olfaction and concentrate mainly on visions.
So obviously, before the situation with COVID and everything kind of threw lots of spanners in the works for everybody, I remember the first time we met was, I didn't know you were in the audience at the time for one of our flying displays, and we were talking about turkey vultures and how their sense of smell can help them in finding their food. And I was definitely 100% under the understanding that vultures like those New World vultures were the only ones to have a sense of smell in the raptor world, and that I think that was the understanding for lots of people, and that's not actually that true, is it?
So most of people, except for New World vultures, as you said, we all believe that they can use sense of smell. But most of people, even scientists, believe like 30 years ago that bird cannot smell, that most bird cannot smell because they never sniff each other except one species, the crested auklet, if I remember correctly, and they never sniff each other. So as a mammals would say, if you want to use olfaction, you need to sniff,
Sure.
and like I did, and so for the bird, it's not true. And since this period, some people started to work on bird olfaction, mostly on seabirds, and they've shown crazy things on bird olfactions. Like some seabirds can smell the colony at more than 800 kilometers, which
Wow.
is crazy, crazy. And so I decided to study a bit raptors because, except the New World vulture, they never been studied before when I started my PhD. And I've read some papers that were wondering whether they can use olfaction like old world vultures in Nepal, whether they can use olfaction. And so I've made some small experiments to prove that. And so for instance, the car that you have in your conservancy, they can use olfaction to smell their food. So I would say that most bird species can use olfaction. We just need to find a good way to prove that.
Definitely, it is fascinating, and it's actually quite nice that there are things that are still there to be explored. There's nothing that's kind of still set in stone that we know for sure. There's loads to still know about these birds, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of things are still to explore in birds and mostly raptors because we all believe that raptors have a crazy eyesight, and because they will have a crazy eyesight, they should have less olfactory ability.
So I was going to talk to you about this actually, because we always say, someone's got eyes like a hawk or they're eagle-eyed, and we assume that all birds of prey, maybe sometimes except the owls, I guess, but that most birds of prey have got fantastic eyesight, and a lot of your work has been involved in this. Is it true to say that someone who has eyes like an eagle has amazing eyesight?
Um, Partially, I would say, partially. Um, Yeah, when I did my falconry display too, I was seeing the same for years. And when I started to work on that, I've seen that before my PhD, only 10 species have been studied so far.
Right.
I think that we have more than 300, 400 raptor species. So it's very, very little. And so to date, I think right now we have like almost 20 species studied so far.
Right.
And it is true that some species have a fantastic eyesight, like the wedge-tailed eagle, which is similar to the golden eagle. They can see in between 2 or 3 times at longer distance than we can, for instance. So it's really good. But some of the species, like the car, for instance, because they all feed on the ground, they don't fly at high altitude, they feed on the ground. They do not need to see at long distance. So they have a poorer eyesight than we have. I would say it depends on the foraging ecology and on the ecology of the animals in general. If you don't need to see at long distance, why you would spend a lot of energy on that?
And a lot of that brain space as well to compute all the information.
Yeah.
So I remember you telling me about Harris hawks, which is a species that, you know, people who work and fly birds of prey, it's a species that people will be familiar with, and probably people listening will have seen a Harris hawk in a bird of prey flying display before. And certainly I always thought they had fantastic vision. And have they got a vision similar to our own as humans?
So I work a lot on this species because it's very simple to work on them. And so if we consider the visual acuity, so how far you can see for very high contrast pattern, so meaning like if you look, let's say that they are searching for black mouse on a white background, so it's very high contrast. So the visual acuity is really similar to that of human. So it's really interesting because you can compare the Harris hawk with the human visual systems, and then you can look at different other visual ability. So yeah, they have similar visual acuity than we do.
And how are you able to study these things? You said about obviously the olfactory study is very difficult because you're trying to control certain aspects of your study on something that you cannot see. How do you do that with visual acuity?
So there are two methods, I would say. So one method is to have a dead animal and to take off the eye and to count every cells in the eyes, like every photoreceptors. I'm not using that method. I'm using the behavioral method. So I train my bird to go to a specific pattern on a screen, on the monitor. So you have two monitors. One monitor is showing a uniform gray, and one monitor is showing, a pattern like stripes, so black and white stripes. And I try to teach the bird to go to the uniform gray, meaning that if they fly to the uniform gray, they get a reward, and if they fly to the other one, the stripes, they do not get a reward. And at once they would have learned, they should learn, to go to the uniform gray. And if they have learned that pattern, I change the size of the bars. And at a specific distance, you can't make the difference between the gray and the bars and the grating. So I try to understand at which bars size they cannot make the difference between the gray and the grating. So it looks simple, but it takes time. So with Harris, it's okay. It takes like a month to teach them. So you have to work every day with them, and it takes a month. But I've tried with many, many species, and like the vultures, they just do not get it.
No way.
I think that for the griffin vulture, for instance, I've done 2,000 trials, and they did not get it. They did not get that gray means food.
Wow. See, I would have always been under the impression that vultures were super smart. Like that. Again, that's always thought about it. I don't know. That's that is interesting.
They just do not care of the monitor. That was my feeling when I've ran the experiment, is that they just do not care of the monitors. They just want to have food, and if they make a mistake, no problem. I just made a mistake.
Wow.
But if you compare to pigeon, it takes 2 weeks.
Wow. Smart pigeons.
Exactly.
So if we can better understand what a bird of prey's vision is like, are there any kind of practical applications in terms of looking after species that will help us to conserve species if we have an understanding of how these birds can understand the world?
I think it's a good question. I have often this question. When I try to answer, I first say that it's also important to have new knowledge of the species, even if there is no conservation um, uh, after. It's really important to know how the species behave and how they can perceive the world. But in terms of conservation program, so I am working at the moment with the problem of wind farm collision with birds. And so studying the visual system is really important in that case, because we do not understand or they can't see that wind farm, like the blades, or why they can't see the blades. It's very easy to see for us. So we are studying the visual system of different species, and mostly raptors, because they often collide with those human devices. And so, yeah, in terms of conservation, it's really important in that case.
So I was watching there's a great talk that you were doing at Toulouse Museum.
You watched it in French, sorry.
I watched it in French. I will admit, I watched it with auto-generated English subtitles. But great talk, and actually, if anybody wants to have a look, we'll put it in the show notes as well. But there was an incredible part where you were away from the kind of understanding of bird of prey senses, but actually how we understand what a bird of prey is. Because again, it's a question we get asked a lot here, like how do we know what is a bird of prey? And we teach school groups and education groups, we say it's a bird that catches and kills with its talons, or has got forward-facing eyes, or all of these different understandings and definitions of birds of prey. What is your understanding of what a bird of prey is? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, I have no answer. So it's really strange, because we all know, when you are looking a bird in the wild, we all know what is a bird in the wild. We don't know what is a bird of prey, if it's a bird of prey or not, right? If you see an eagle, you can say it's a bird of prey.
Yes.
In terms of scientific classification, we don't have really a lot of clue what is a bird of prey, because you can look at the ecology, as I say, they catch with talons. That's not true for vultures, for instance.
Yes.
We often say that they eat meat. That's not true for the palm nut vulture, who eat like 90% of palm nut fruits in the wild. So that's really hard. And also in terms of genetic, so phylogeny is the classification of birds by the genetic. It's also, there is no bird of prey group. I mean, because for instance, falcons, they are closer to parrots than to eagle or hawk or buzzards or even owl. So it's so hard. But there is a new paper in 2019 from Chris McClure, and he tried to classify bird of prey, and he made a very good paper. So we can have a clue what is a bird of prey, and his new classifications is based on genetic and ecology. And he was saying that Seriama, right now they belong to bird of prey. So it's really hard. We don't have a good definition.
So you're saying that genetically, birds of prey across the board are not necessarily related, not closely related as we'd expect them to be.
They are respread. I mean, mostly falcons are spread from the other ones, because even an eagle is closer to an owl than a falcon, which is a nonsense from ecology. Yeah. But this is the case from genetics. So it's really hard to know what is a bird of prey. So I'm sorry. And when I'm speaking with my colleague from Montpellier, for instance, they say, you can't say raptor. It means nothing. You have to stop to use the term of raptors. But in the meantime, when you use raptors, everyone knows what you want to say.
Yeah, we're going to have to develop new language, aren't we, to understand what these things are.
Exactly, but hard, really hard.
So we often try to find ways to encourage young people to kind of get involved in, studying birds of prey and getting involved in wildlife conservation and research. What sort of advice would you give to young people to getting involved in the sort of thing that you've been doing?
Okay, I think the first part is to have a passion. I mean, if you want to work on bird of prey, you need to be. I mean, you need to have a passion for bird of prey. So that's
Mm.
the first point, and I think that's my feeling because I'm also a falconer, as you know, as you know. And when I started to do my PhD, it was really hard because most ornithologists didn't want to work with falconer. And since I've done my PhD, and thanks to my PhD supervisor Olivier Durier, the two world they are starting to collaborate in France. And I
Wow.
think it's really, really important when you want to be a biologist on if you want to work on conservation on every animals to work with different person, not only scientists, not only falconers, but we should all work together. So that would be my main advice is that we have different way of working on raptors. You make fly your birds, you have a very good commentary on your birds, and you explain a lot of things at your conservancy to people. And that's a really, really important point because as a biologist, we just we not just, but we are doing experiments. We publish this experiment, but except scientists, no one is reading it. So if we want to share the knowledge, we need the falconer. So I would say we need to do a very, if you want to work on conservation on birds of prey, we need to all work together.
There seems like there's quite a lot of angles as well to come in from. So either having that starting passion in the sciences in general, or having it starting in an understanding of birds of prey and that kind of one-to-one understanding of the animals that you want to work with. Yeah, it can come from both ways. So you said you've got potential new projects happening in the pipeline. What's next for you, all being well?
Yeah. If the COVID situation is getting better, which I'm afraid a bit of, because we all get vaccinated and it does not change so much the
Yeah.
situation, and I am vaccinated, so I have no problem with that.
Hey.
So the next step will be, so I have two potential fundings that will arrive. One is working on multimodality on bird sense. So because I used to work on vision and on olfaction separately, but we know that in the wild it's not working like that. You use both sense in the meantime to have an accurate response to every specific environmental condition. And so I want to combine olfaction, vision, and audition uh, in bird of prey because we know very little on hearing and bird of prey except for owls. And the other project is more a conservation project, is to work on bird collision with the wind farm and to try to find a solution to so I have a PhD student at the moment that she is working on vision to see the contrast sensitivity of birds, whether it can explain collision. But in the meantime, you need to afraid the birds from the wind farm. Sorry, and so if you want to do that, you need to find the good repellent system on the wind farm to avoid collision. So I want to try a good repellent system using multimodality, so hearing, vision, olfaction. I just need to find a good one.
Fantastic. It all sounds really exciting. Um, Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning. It's so lovely to hear from you. And we were hoping to do this interview in person, weren't we? When you were going to come and visit again. Unfortunately, it's not happened for now, but we'd love to welcome you back in the future.
You know that I will because it's at the Conservancy. I discovered this place thanks to Rattle Research Raptors Foundation. Sorry, the conference that I was in the Kruger Park in South Africa, and I've met some person from the Conservancy, and I said I have to be there. And when I've been there, I really appreciate the way you behave with the birds, and mostly because you are doing a very transversal way of working with bird of prey, doing research, doing display, and I really, really appreciate the display you've done. So congrats for that, and be sure that I will come back and with some falconers from France and some researcher, because I want them to see that.
A big thank you to Simon for coming on our podcast. That was certainly a really interesting chat. Tom, you probably found out some new information there, I should think.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, what an interesting guy, and someone that has, a great working relationship with birds as well. So we could kind of bond over our shared love of working one-to-one with birds. But yeah, what amazing research he's done, and it's kind of paving the way to a greater understanding of what we already know about birds of prey and their senses. So yeah, I had a lot of fun talking to Simon. So I wanted to just pick up on something, Hannah, which is with my events manager hat on at this point. I'd just like to mention that we're looking forward to our African sunset safari evenings over the next few weeks. We've done a couple already, but I just wanted to say there's a few tickets left for anyone who fancies an evening out on the Savannah Arena. You'll be surrounded by the most incredible African birds of prey. It's like going on safari to Africa without actually having to leave the country, which is very useful at the moment, isn't it?
Well, that sounds amazing. So visiting us for events is a really great way to support our work. And of course, you get an unforgettable evening.
It's a quick reminder as well that our Matter of Fact challenge is all good to go. And you can vote for either Hannah or, of course, you can vote for me. And it'll all be there on our Instagram stories, or find our poll on our Twitter feed. Hannah, it's also worth mentioning that it really helps us if those that are listening to us leave a review, just like this one. I'm liking this part of the show, reading out a little review.
I love reviews.
Yes. This one has come from somebody with the username Bally703, and it's via Apple Podcasts, and came from Australia. Amazing. The review says, "Excellent. A lovely podcast. I'm an expat living in Australia, and it keeps me in touch with the wildlife and countryside of the UK. I especially enjoyed the episode with the children sending their recordings in." Yes, that was back in January, wasn't it? That was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great episode. I loved that episode as well. It was really funny.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was really, really nice. And if you're sitting there listening and you haven't left a review, you're more than welcome to, and we'll do our best to read them out if we get any new ones between now and then. So thank you, Bally703. Lovely to hear from you, and I hope you're all right down under.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, there's loads more where that came from, so don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss out.
If you'd like to know more about anything we've talked about in today's show, then head over to our social media pages, where you'll find our blog that accompanies this podcast, and loads more besides. We are at Hoot Conservancy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube.
So next month, we'll be taking you all along with us on a day in the life of me, a member of the Conservation Research Department. Actually, Tom, I've got a new title.
What? Yeah. Hang on, this is a podcast exclusive here. Nature's a Hoot exclusive. Hannah's got a new title. Who are you then?
So my new title is, it's a little bit of a mouthful. I'm the Conservation and Communications Coordinator.
Ooh.
Or 3 C's for short.
The triple C. Conservation
Triple C.
and Communications Coordinator, Hannah Shaw. We're going to be going on a day in the life with you.
Yeah,
next month.
Are we not doing a day in the life with you?
Oh, was it? Yeah,
one...
yeah. I mean, we could go on a day. Tell you what, let's leave it to be seen.
That was the idea.
Shall we both? Well, yes. At a later date, you can come on a day in life with me, but you're busy being Conservation and Communications Coordinator now. I've still got my old title, General Dog's Body. Really.
Yeah.
So I can come with you for this day in the life.
I mean, if you have to.
Yeah. Thank you. But from Hannah and I, it's goodbye until next time. We'll see you next month.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.